When I was a kid, before my family moved to Texas, we lived in Georgia in a house with a massive backyard. It was the ultimate hangout spot. 2 acres of open space, surrounded by woods on 3 sides, filled with trees, a trampoline, a hot tub, a 3-car garage, and even an above-ground pool. For a middle-class neighborhood, our backyard had everything we could ever want. It was perfect for playing sports: soccer, baseball, football, you name it. We even played hide and seek, or as we called it, manhunt. One Friday, when we were in 6th grade, my friends and I decided to have a backyard campout. It was me, Mike, another Mike, who I'll call Michael, and Jason. After getting permission from our parents, everyone arrived around 5 p.m. We spent the next couple of hours playing soccer and baseball before my parents ordered us pizza. By the time we finished eating, the sun was starting to set, so we decided to set up the tents before it got too dark. Since I was a Boy Scout, I took the lead while my friends helped here and there. By the time we were finished, the backyard lights were on, casting a warm glow over the yard. It was finally dark enough for manhunt. We played in pairs. Mike and I hid first while Michael and Jason hunted. Our home base was the back door of the house, but no one was allowed to camp by it. I crawled under the trampoline in the far corner of the yard, hiding in the shadows. When the game started, I watched as Michael and Jason searched the yard, waiting for my moment to move. My plan was to sneak over to the hot tub, which was close to the house, and then sprint straight to home base. As soon as their backs were turned, I bolted for the hot tub, crouching behind it just in time. But then, something strange happened. I heard a trash bin on the side of the house nearly tip over, followed by the motion sensor light switching on. The hot tub wouldn't have triggered that light. Curious, I peeked around the corner and saw a tall figure dressed in dark clothes speed-walking toward the woods. My heart started racing. This wasn't my dad. I ran to my friends, calling off the game immediately, and we told my dad what I had seen. He came outside and searched the woods for a few minutes before checking the street for any unusual cars, but he found nothing. He told us we should sleep inside, which of course was a huge disappointment. Instead of camping, we ended up playing PlayStation in the living room. As we played, I kept describing the man I had seen. A tall figure walking away after nearly knocking over our trash bin. The more we talked, the more we convinced ourselves it was nothing serious. Eventually, we decided to go back outside and sleep in the tents anyway. What were the odds that whoever it was would still be out there hours later? We quietly grabbed our sleeping bags and made our way outside. Mike and I shared one tent while Michael and Jason took the other. At first, we were joking around, yelling between tents, but eventually, things quieted down, and we started to drift off to sleep. I was still awake when I heard footsteps in the grass. My heart started pounding as I listened to them approaching our tent. Then, the zipper to our tent slowly started to open. I looked up, expecting to see my dad checking on us, but the face staring into the tent wasn't my dad's. It was a stranger, a man about my dad's age, peering inside. But before I could react, he spoke.
"What are you guys doing out here?"
At first, I mumbled something about us wanting to sleep outside, still half asleep and confused. But then I really looked at him, and realized I had never seen this man before in my life. He wasn't my dad. He wasn't a neighbor. He was a total stranger. Before I could do anything, he started crawling into the tent. That's when I lost it. I screamed as loud as I could. Pure, terrified instinct. Mike woke up and started screaming too. The man suddenly grabbed our ankles, hissing at us to be quiet. But when he realized we weren't stopping, he backed off and disappeared into the darkness. I didn't hesitate. I yelled for my friends to run. We bolted for the house as fast as we could. As we reached the back door, my dad was already storming outside, having heard our screams. Out of breath, I told him what had happened. The man from earlier had come back, and this time, he tried to get into our tent. Furious, my dad stormed around the yard, shouting and daring the guy to come back. We listened from inside the living room as he called out threats, but the man never returned. My mom immediately called the police. When the officer arrived, he took my statement and filed a report, but there wasn't much else he could do. The man had vanished into the woods. To this day, I have no idea who he was, if he ever returned, or if he was ever caught. But one thing's for sure. If we hadn't woken up in time, that night could have ended very differently. I work in risk management for a major bank in Manhattan. Through my job, I've met a lot of interesting people, and happy hours with my coworkers are a regular thing. In 2019, a new guy named Sebastian transferred to our office. From day one, he was incredibly sociable, always talking, always laughing, always the life of the party. That first Friday, he came out with us for drinks, and his energy was contagious. He had stories for days about the beautiful women he'd been with, the celebrities he'd met, the crazy experiences he'd had. At first, I ate it all up, but as time went on, I started noticing that a lot of his stories didn't quite add up. Still, he was fun to be around, so I didn't question it too much. Over time, we became friendly, hanging out occasionally on weekends. One day, he invited me to go with him and his sister to their family condo in St. Pete Beach, Florida. His mom was wealthy and owned multiple properties, including a place in Beverly Hills and another in Colorado. That weekend, she would be at the condo, and Sebastian promised it would be a great time. I decided to bring my younger brother Tyler along. We all took the same flight, and I met Sebastian's sister at the airport. She was different, quirky, in a way I couldn't quite put my finger on. When we arrived, the condo was impressive. 3 bedrooms, something I'd never seen in a condo before. Sebastian and his sister each took their own rooms, while Tyler and I shared one. Since we landed late, the beach wasn't an option, so we headed out to some beach bars. The vibe was relaxed, mostly an older crowd, but Sebastian started drinking way too fast. At first, we laughed it off, but then he got aggressive. He was going up to every girl he saw, drunkenly hitting on them, and most of them looked visibly uncomfortable. Things escalated when he approached a girl who was there with her boyfriend. A big guy got in Sebastian's face, and I had to step in, de-escalating the situation and apologizing. Instead of being grateful, Sebastian shoved me and called me a piece of, accusing me of not having his back. Tyler and I tried to calm him down, but he stormed off, with his sister silently following him. Tyler and I stayed behind, finishing our drinks. A pair of girls approached us, laughing about Sebastian's behavior and asking how we knew him. We played it off, had a good conversation, and even got their numbers. They invited us to a downtown spot later, and we agreed to meet them. Before heading out, I texted Sebastian, asking where he was. He replied instantly, saying they were back at the condo. When Tyler and I returned, I expected him to still be angry, but instead, he was weirdly cheerful, almost manic. He jumped up from the couch, grinning ear to ear, asking if we were going out. I told him we'd chill for a bit first, then mentioned the girls' numbers. The second I said there were 2 girls, his smile vanished. Then Tyler jokingly added that the girls had asked about him after he left. This set Sebastian off. Without a word, he stormed into his room and slammed the door shut. I turned to his sister and whispered, "Is he always like this?" She responded coldly.
Like what?
Her tone was off, like she was in denial or trying to protect him. Tyler and I decided to head out without them and met up with the girls. The night was fun until my phone started blowing up with messages from Sebastian. "Where are you? How could you just leave me here?" I showed the messages to Tyler and the girls, and everyone agreed that something was seriously wrong with him. We cut the night short and Ubered back to the condo, worried he might actually throw our stuff out. When we arrived, Sebastian was just sitting on the couch, staring at the wall. I asked if he was okay. He glanced at me, smirked, and muttered, "Yeah, hope you had fun." Then he got up and went to his room. Whatever, I was over it. Tyler and I stayed up for a while just talking, when we suddenly heard footsteps outside our door. We went completely silent. The footsteps stopped right in front of our door, and stayed there. Minutes passed. No movement. Just silence. Then, finally, we heard the footsteps walk away, followed by the sound of Sebastian talking. At first, we thought he was on the phone, but then we realized there was no one responding. He was laughing, mumbling, saying weird things to himself. I crept to the door, cracked it open, and peered out. In the dim light of the living room, I saw him in the corner, leaning against the wall, head down, laughing to himself. Then he said, clear as day, "Joe is always such a stupid." And then he laughed again. "My name is Joe." I quietly closed the door and backed away. Tyler whispered, "What the?" We agreed. First thing in the morning, we were getting a hotel. We tried to sleep, but the laughing and talking continued outside for at least 15 more minutes. Then the footsteps returned to our door. They stopped. Silence. Then they finally moved to Sebastian's room. We heard his door shut. But then, maybe 20 minutes later, I jolted awake. Something felt off. I looked toward the door. Sebastian was standing in front of it, just standing there, staring. I jumped up. "Yo, what are you doing?" He lunged at me, screaming, trying to strangle me. "You're a piece of shit!" he yelled, thrashing as Tyler ripped him off me and threw him across the room. He crashed into the corner, yelling, "You suck, Joe! I invited you here, and all you did was on my life and talk shit about me to my sister!" There was no reasoning with him. He was completely gone. We grabbed our stuff, called an Uber, and got the hell out of there, spending the rest of the trip in a hotel. Back in Manhattan, Sebastian avoided me completely. He wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't even look at me. Within a few weeks, he transferred to another office, probably because of me. I don't know what was wrong with him, but whatever it was, that night in his condo terrified me.